I'm Rob Higuerita, and I'm an enterprise support lead at AWS, and I'm based out of Austin, Texas. Welcome to AWS Supports You, where we share best practices and troubleshooting tips from AWS support. And joining me today is Tanya Pahuja and Chetan Suri from AWS Support. Can you give us a quick introduction, Tanya, and then Chetan?
Thanks, Rob. Hi, everybody. This is Tanya Pahuja. I'm a technical account manager here at AWS based out of Delhi, India. I'm really excited to be a part of this show today where we are going to discuss on Amazon DMS and managed databases. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Chetan. So I am one of the senior technical account managers based out of Singapore and part of the enterprise support team, and excited to be here, between all of you. Yeah.
Thanks, Tanya, and thanks, Chetan. Especially thanks for joining us from across the globe today. So today we'll be talking about using AWS Database Migration Service to migrate your databases to Amazon Aurora. We'll specifically be focusing on some of the use cases for migrating to AWS managed databases, leveraging the Database Migration Service. But before we get into the details of the show today, a quick note to the attendees online. Please feel free to use the chat window on the right-hand side of your screen to ask your questions and share your thoughts throughout the episode. We really look forward to hearing from you today and interacting with you. So, Tanya, can you walk us through what we're going to be talking about today?
Sure. So everyone, we are going to discuss on the advantages and benefits of moving to managed databases. We would also talk about AWS migration tooling, and then we would discuss around what is the DMS process and what are some of the supported source and targets. We would also dig deeper into different use cases of moving to managed databases. And then we would talk a little more about what is Amazon Aurora. And then at the end, we would do a quick walkthrough of migrating the self-managed databases running on EC2 or on on-prem to Amazon Aurora. So here in this slide, the self-managing databases could be quite, time complexing, tedious, and expensive. So for many companies, database management is undifferentiated heavy lifting. Your data is one of the most valuable assets your company owns, but the management of your database is not where you provide value. So for customers running legacy databases and analytics infrastructure on-premise or all self-managed on EC2, provisioning, operating, scaling, and managing databases, data lakes, search, streaming services could be tedious, time-consuming, and expensive. Customer at times do mention, they worry about operational efficiency, such as hardware and software installations, or configurations, patchings, backups, even about performance and availability issues. So the scalability issues are also very common, such as capacity planning and scaling of clusters for compute and storage, as well as security, which is job zero. And the compliance issues can also be faced while running the databases on EC2 self-managed or on-prem. So customers want to spend their time innovating and building new applications and not managing the infrastructure. And thus, the AWS managed databases handle all the fundamental operations. You get patching and minor upgrades without downtime, and the automated backups, failover, high availability, durability, and also support via AWS support. You can always reach out for any issues that you face. And thus, we really want to allow your developers or your teams to focus on the features that matters for your business. Now here, moving to fully managed databases. So the most straightforward and simple solution for many customers who are struggling to maintain their own relational databases is a move to managed database service. The first factor to consider when choosing a managed database is the database type. So in this slide, we are going to discuss what are the different options that you have while you decide to move from self-managed or on-prem databases to managed databases on AWS. And let me tell you, in most of the cases, these customers can migrate the workloads and applications to managed service without needing to re-architect the applications. And thus, your teams can continue to leverage these same DB skills. So if you're using a relational database, as you can see here on the left-hand side of the slide, Amazon RDS supports different relational database engines. So this could be open source options such as MySQL and PostgreSQL, or the commercial options such as Microsoft SQL Server or the Oracle database. Then if you're using a non-relational database, you want to go ahead with those, then AWS offers multiple options there as well. Like Amazon Document DB is a fully managed MongoDB compatible document database. We also have options of Amazon Elastic Cache that provides supports for both Redis and Memcache databases. So with this variety of database types available, you can find the right managed database for you on AWS. So I'll take a pause here just to check with Rob. Rob, do we have any questions here from the audience before I hand it over to Chetan?
Hi, Tanya. Yes, we do have one question from the audience so far today here from AWS Anishka. What do you mean when you say managed services in AWS? What's the difference between serverless and managed or fully managed services? Be able to provide some info on that?
Sure. So when we say managed database service, managed services means you don't have to care about provisioning or the downgrades, upgrade versions of your services. It is something which is managed by AWS in whole. You just have to start using it, and AWS will take care of all these provisioning, scaling, compute capacities, etc. And for more information, we can also share the links about AWS managed databases and other managed services that we have that can provide you more idea around what a managed services does.
Great, thanks, Tanya. Back to you.
Great. So I will hand it over to Chetan here to talk about the next topic, which is on the migration tooling.
Okay, thanks, Tanya. So in this section, we'll talk about the two key toolings that we use for database migration. One is the schema conversion tool. The other one is the database migration service. So suppose if you are trying to move your databases from different DB engines, right? So suppose you're trying to move from Oracle to Amazon Aurora, maybe Amazon Aurora PostgreSQL, and you want to move your existing schema from Oracle to Amazon Aurora, right? So something which is compatible with the target one. So basically, the SCT, which is schema conversion tool, helps you to convert the existing DB schema from one DB engine to the another. Now, it actually provides you an interface to convert the source DB schema to one that is more compatible to the target DB, right? And once you convert this, DB schema, it's not that you only use it with some of the managed services, managed database services like RDS, but you can also use this converted schema on a database that's running on top of an EC2 instance. The next one is the database migration service. So this is a service to migrate the data into AWS cloud, or between a combination of on-prem and the cloud setups. So this makes the whole migration easy for relational databases, for data warehouses, and even for the NoSQL databases as well. One of the key features in DMS is the full load or the CDC. So suppose you have a database and you want to exact same state of that database in your target, you can use the full load as as the initial full load. And then if you want to keep your source and target into sync, then you can use the CDC option as well, which is change data capture. So just to give you a high-level overview how this database migration will look like, you have a replication instance within DMS. So this replication instance is connected to a source, and this also connected to a target. And then you create migration tasks in DMS to migrate the actual data from source to the target using the replication instance. And how both of them are related. So if you're using the two database engines, which are actually different, you can use schema conversion tool to convert your schema first, and then you can use DMS to migrate the DB itself. Okay, let's talk about some of the key features of DMS. So DMS, so basically security is always a priority in AWS. So we provide you mechanisms, we provide you options like IAM policies, so that you can assign permissions to your AWS DMS resources. So what it means is that you can have IAM to create control that who creates, who describes, or who modify, or who deletes the database instances. And DMS uses SSL, which is secure socket layer, to connect to your endpoint connections to ensure that whatever data is flowing from your source to your target via the replication instance is actually encrypted. And then you can associate the security groups as well, with the replication instance, which provides you secure communication, from the replication instance to the source and the target endpoints. One of the other features is assessments, right? So basically, you can run pre-migration assessments. So these assessments, so you can identify problems that might occur when the actual migration task will run. So you can check the migration task before the launch itself, and it alerts you for any potential issues, maybe some unsupported data types, right? And it actually prevents any runtime migration failures when the actual migration is happening. The next feature is validate, right? So basically, you can have the data validation. So once your migration is completed, you can validate if the data is migrated properly or not. So it compares the row in source with the corresponding row in the target, and then verifies that whether the data is actually migrated properly or not, and it reports if there is any mismatch found. Now, this validation feature is actually available for both, that is full load as well as CDC, that is the change data capture, and it also works across the homogeneous and the heterogeneous migrations. So we'll cover in the next section what are the homogeneous and heterogeneous migrations are. Now, one of the very important features is monitoring, right? So you want to always look at what's the status of your task, how the migration is actually going on. So AWS provides you tools, it provides you mechanisms to monitor DMS tasks and resources. So DMS events and notifications, you can create SNS notifications on top of this, and whenever whenever creation or deletion of a replication instance happen, you can be notified with the help of SNS notifications. And you would also like to have a notification whenever the task status changes, right? So basically, if your task is in created states, or whether it's in a running state, or whether it's in a stopped state, you can be notified with the help of notifications whenever the task status changes. It also has an integration with Amazon CloudWatch. What it means is that you can have notifications when the state is changed over a specified period of time, right? Then you can be notified for those things as well. Now, customers are always looking for some low-cost mechanisms to migrate databases, right? And DMS fits in the use case perfectly. So basically, DMS provides you, options to run on-demand instances, and you just pay by the hour, right? So which means that there are no long-term commitments, and it provides you low-cost mechanisms to migrate your existing databases. So there are no complexities of planning, purchasing, or maintaining the hardwares, and it actually makes the whole entire process quick and inexpensive for you. Again, one of the very important features is snowball integration. So so you can use AWS DMS with Snowball Edge to migrate the databases more quickly. So some of the use cases where customers use Snowball integration could be, when you have a database which is very large in size. So it could be maybe over 5 terabytes. And when you have many databases to migrate at once, or maybe the network that you have on your on-prem side, it's not as it's actually very slow network, right? So DMS integration with Snowball Edge fits into this use case to migrate the large databases also. Now, before I move on to the next slide, Rob, just wanted to check, do we have any questions at this point of time?
Hey, Jane, yeah, thank you for asking. So we do have a question from Tame242. Welcome back to the show. Does SCT also transfer data?
Yes, so SCT can also transfer data. So basically, the use case can be, if you have a large data warehouses, you can use SCT, whereas DMS is more suitable for, the databases which are under 10 terabytes of storage. Yeah.
Great, thanks, appreciate that. Back over to you.
Okay, now let's look at the differences between the homogeneous and the heterogeneous migrations. So the option that you see on the top is where I'm actually trying to move from Oracle to Oracle database. So the Oracle on the left can be running on my on-prem database, and the one on the right could be on AWS. So the database engine in this use case remains the same. So which means this is one of the homogeneous use cases, right? So where the two databases which have the same engine is called as the homogeneous migrations. Whereas if you look at the second use case where I'm trying to move my SQL Server to Amazon Aurora. So this is one of the heterogeneous use case. So DMS supports both, which means it supports if you have the two databases with the same engines, or if you have the two different database engines for the migration as source and the target. Now, there are certain conditions that apply, and which are very important to remember, is that when you use AWS DMS, either the source or target must be an AWS service. For example, you can use AWS DMS to migrate to AWS from an on-premise setup, or you can, probably you can, move to an on-premise setup from AWS. Especially for the second use case, again, you can use the schema conversion tool. So basically, if you have a homogeneous migration use case, you can use Engine's native tools to export and import the schema. And whereas if you have the heterogeneous use cases, you can use schema conversion tool to convert the schema itself. Now, if you look at the last use case, which is, customers also try to move their databases to Amazon S3. Amazon S3 is the object storage in AWS. You can even migrate your databases to S3 as well. So when you use S3, both CDC and the full load are supported. And the data is written in the default format, which is .csv. But for more compact storage use cases, or maybe for more faster query options, you can use Apache Parquet as also one of the formats to store data on S3. Okay, so let's look at this, at how a typical data migration looks like with the help of DMS, right? So if you see that I have some application users which are connected to my on-premise data center, and there's a database running there. Now this on-premise data center is connected to my AWS region, to my AWS account using one of the VPN tunnels. And I have a target database in my AWS environment where I finally want my application users to move to, right? So the first thing that I do is that I start a replication instance. So replication instance connects to the source database, reads the source data, and loads the data into the target data store. Now, you can also use the multi-AZ options for replication instance. So by using a replication instance, you can get the high availability and the failover support with multi-AZ deployment when you choose the multi-AZ options to set up within the replication instance itself. Now, if you're familiar with services like EC2, RDS, when you spin up a new instance, you select the instance type, right? Same happens with DMS as well. So you can choose from the variety of different instance types, for example, T3, so which are more general purpose instance type. You can also use C5s, which deliver cost-effective and high performance at a low price. Or you can use R5s. So R5s are the next-gen memory-optimized instance types that you can use for these use cases. The next thing that you do is that you connect to a source and the target. So basically, you create the sources and the target endpoints, and you connect to them using your replication instance. So you can create the source and the target endpoints while creating the replication instance, or you can create them when the replication is created. And then the source and the target can be Amazon EC2 instance. It can be an Amazon RDS DB instance, or it can be one of your on-premise database as well. Again, one thing to remember is that one of the endpoints should be an AWS service. Means that you can't use AWS DMS to move from an on-premise database to another on-premise database. Now, when you create these endpoints, you provide certain options, like you provide the endpoint type, whether that's a source or a target. You provide what's the DB engine. You provide the database name. You provide the username and the password as well. So basically, these credentials should have permissions to allow the database migrations from the source and the target to the target DB as well. Now, you can also optionally test the endpoint connections, whether your replication instance is able to connect to the source and the target or not. You can do that. As a next step, what you do is that you create tasks. So basically, AWS DMS task is where all the work actually happens. So you specify what tables, views, and schemas to use for your migration. So before you create a task, make sure that you create a source endpoint, target endpoint, and a replication instance itself. And then you run the task and let the migration happen from your source to target endpoint. Once the migration completes, you can always run data validation. So validation compares, whether your source and the target are in sync or not, and you can also use data validation for the incremental changes as well. And CDC, one of the options that again you can use. So if you want to keep your source and the target in sync, you can use change data capture as an option here. And finally, when I think it's the right time, I can move my application users to my new database, which is in AWS environment. So I just switch my applications to the new DB and move my connections to the new target database. So this is how typically a database migration in AWS with the help of DMS looks like. Okay, let's look at some of these supported source and the targets. So these are some of the popular source and targets that AWS DMS supports. So DMS and SCT, that's a schema conversion tool, supports a range of relational NoSQL analytics and data warehouse source and the targets. So it can use many of the popular DB engines at source, such as PostgreSQL, MySQL, SQL Server, Azure SQL, and even S3, right? So the database source can be a self-managed engine running on top of an EC2 instance. It can be an on-premise database. It can be a RDS instance, or it can be a data that's on top of a S3 bucket. And as a source, the targets for targets as well, DMS supports popular databases as targets. And the targets can be, again, Amazon EC2 instances or RDS or your on-premise setups. And we are constantly adding new database engines to the support as well. Now, before we move on to the next section, Rob, do we have any questions from the audience at this point in time?
Hey, thanks, Shane. Yes, we do have a couple questions that came in. I'm just going to go with one for right now, and I'll probably follow up some more here in a second. Really, they wanted to know, as far as the migrating DBs, is it possible to do from other cloud service providers like Azure and GCP to AWS, and does it require any third-party tools?
I can take that one.
Okay.
Okay. So you can migrate from the other cloud providers to AWS, but not directly with DMS. That involves apparently some proxy, or we can make use of other AWS services. So by using any proxy, you can definitely try to migrate from other cloud providers to AWS.
All right, thanks, Tanya. I appreciate the answer. Back over to you all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so in the next section, Tanya will help us to understand some of the use cases where DMS can be used. Over to you, Tanya. Thank you.
Thank you, Chetan. So in this slide, we are going to discuss the different use cases where DMS and SCT, which Chetan spoke about in the earlier slides, what do they support and what sort of things that we can do with AWS DMS and AWS SCT. So basically, DMS and SCT, they work in conjunction to both migrate your databases and then support the ongoing replications for a variety of use cases, such as whether it's populating the data marts or synchronizing your systems, etc. So SCT can copy the database schemas for homogeneous migrations and then convert them for heterogeneous migrations. And these schemas can be between databases. So for example, if you have Oracle to the PostgreSQL, or between the data warehouses like Amazon Redshift to Netezza, etc. So once a schema has been created on your empty target, depending upon the volume of data and or the supported engines, either DMS or SCT is then used to move the data. So DMS traditionally used to move these smaller relational databases, which Chetan also discussed in some earlier slides. And SCT is primarily used to migrate the large data warehouse workloads. So DMS supports the ongoing replication to keep the target in sync with the source, while SCT doesn't support that. So you can use AWS SCT replication agent if you are looking to migrate the bigger data workloads. And the replication agent is there, which works in conjunction with both DMS and SCT. And then few of the use cases, which is mentioned in the slide, like for example, if you're trying to migrate the business critical applications, or you're consolidating shards into Amazon Aurora, or you're converting the embedded SQL codes in an application, so you can migrate from NoSQL to SQL, from SQL to NoSQL, etc. And then you can also migrate the data warehouse data to Amazon Redshift using the DMS and SCT. And it also supports Replicate, where you can create cross-region read replicas and run your analytics in the cloud, and then just hydrate your data lakes. So these are replication tasks can just be set up in minutes instead of taking hours or days. And then AWS database migration services also monitors for the replication tasks that we discussed. So this is few of the use cases where you can use both AWS TMS and SCT. In the next slide, we are going to discuss here moving to managed relational databases, right? Managing a database is a sensitive, task with the risk of catastrophic downside as well. So the failure of your primary instance can mean downtime for your application. That means business impacts. But by moving to managed databases, we actually, provide all that facilities and provisioning where the database operations are managed by AWS. Then leaving your team to focus on innovations, and the Amazon RDS databases, handles the instance failovers or data backups and software updates. And thus, it is an advantage to move to managed relational databases, and then you can just enjoy the efficiencies of the AWS cloud for a fast and reliable database option. Now here, what are the benefits while moving to managed relational databases? So that includes the ability to provision new on-prem databases in minutes. This was one of the questions from our audience, right? You can just make the backups and also have the restore to a point in time. So these are few of the benefits of moving to managed databases, and you get automated management of your on-premise databases without having to provision or manage the database engine. And AWS also has the experience of managing the large number of databases, and then you can also automate the database backups to comply with regulations and ensure that your data is safe in the event of any emergency. I would definitely like to share this. There was a recent study which was done by AWS where we considered customers who used Amazon relational databases, which is a fully managed service from AWS. And the study found that the customers had 39% lower database operation cost, and also a very high percentage return on investment over a couple of years. So these customers work with AWS, and they were really benefited from the benefits of moving to managed databases. And that's the reason, if you're looking on to move to managed databases, you need to consider what really differentiates your company, and relentlessly focusing on the innovations on these key differences. In this slide, we are going to focus more on Amazon Aurora, which is a MySQL Postgres compatible relational database built for the cloud that combines the performance and availability of the traditional enterprise databases with the simplicity and cost effectiveness of open source databases. So Amazon Aurora provides many benefits, and it's a distributed, fault tolerant, self-healing system that automatically scales up, and it also delivers high performance and availability. And we are going to also discuss few of the advantages. As you can see here on the slide, it provides performance and availability and scalability so that you can easily scale your databases up and down from smaller to larger instances types as you need. Or you can also use Aurora serverless handling, scaling automatically for you. And then second, availability and durability. So Amazon Aurora transparently recovers from the physical storage failures, and the instance failovers typically takes less than few seconds. And you can also backtrack within seconds to previous point in time to recover from user errors. Security is another advantage, which is a job zero, and Aurora provides multiple levels of security for your databases. So these include network isolations, for example, if you want to use Amazon VPC encryption, Amazon VPC, or you want to use encryptions at rest, or you want to control via KMS, or you want to encrypt the data in transit using SSL. So all these features are provided by Amazon Aurora. And then last but not the least, it is a fully managed service that we already discussed, and all the administration tasks like database setup, patchings to backup is taken care by Amazon Aurora. So before we move on to the demo where we'll discuss how to migrate to Amazon Aurora, I would like to ask Rob if we have any questions from the audience.
Hi, yes, we do have a question from Den Jacob 111. Does DMS affect the resource consumption on my source and target databases?
Yes. Okay, so I can take that one. So yes. So basically, there are multiple factors to that, right? So let me show you this specific slide that I covered. See, so basically, there could be multiple database engines that you. I mean, it depends on what database engine that you're trying to use. It depends on what is your instance type that you're trying to use, right? So basically, we have observed that yes, AWS DMS uses some resources on the source and the target databases. So, for example, during a full load task, DMS performs a full table scan of the source table for each table process in parallel. So, a couple of suggestions on this particular point that you reduce the number of tasks or the tables for each task of your migration during the DMS migration itself. You can turn off the unnecessary triggers that are there in your source databases. You can actually turn off the secondary indexes during the initial load, and then probably turn them on during the series itself. And especially for the RDS databases, you may turn off the backups and the multi-AZ option. And for non-RDS databases, you may turn off any logging on the target until the cutover happens. So these are a couple of best practices. If you use, then you can definitely control the resource consumption on your target and the source databases. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Jaden. Appreciate that. Back over to you.
Tanya.
Hey, Tanya, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, I would pick up this particular database here and show tables. So these are the set of tables that I have with me. Now I'm going to go over this DMS console where I have this Aurora endpoint ready with me. I'm trying to connect to the Aurora endpoint here with my test user. And just going to show you the databases here. So we're going to type show databases, and we are checking the databases that we have here on the target. So these are the set of databases that we have on the target. Now on the DMS migration task, I'm going to create a migration task give a task identifier. I'm giving it a demo on-prem to Aurora. I already have a replication instance ready, so I'll choose that. Source is my running on EC2 and the destination is Aurora. I'll let all other settings be as is, and then I'll add a new selection rule, basically to select the schema that would be used during the migration. So I would be using the employees. And in the migration task startup configuration, I'm using manually later. So I would start my task later. Now here you see that status is creating, and we're just going to refresh it, and it's changed to ready. So this task would be used now. So you can checkbox this and go to actions and then start your task. And this would start replicating from your source to target. So source, which is running on EC2, and going to migrate the tables and databases to Aurora, which is your target. So here in the overview details, you see progress, which is still 0%. And now we can also check on the table statistics. So it also provides the different statistics and schema and tables. And it is still okay. We see it is turned up to 2%. Now I've come back to my Aurora instance, and I'm going to check the databases that I have. And I see employees here. I'm going to use this particular database by typing the command use employees. And now going to check on the different tables that we have here, show tables. So these are different tables that we have inside the database employees. And I'm going to check on the progress. So this is 3%. It's just going to take some time while it tries to replicate all the tables fully. And I think as we can see here, these are the set of tables that you see in the table statistics. And for the table temp under employees, we see these are the full load rows. These are the rows that has been migrated during the full load. So we can check on the status here, just to, if you want to continuously monitor, you can check on the table statistics just to see, what's the progress on the replication. So I've come back here on my self-managed DB running on EC2. I'm just going to check what are the count of different rows that I have in my table temp. So select count star from temp, and just going to look up. So here I have around close to 198 million rows. And if I see the progress, which is increased, and under the full load rows as well, I can see the number of rows has increased, but it has still not reached to, I have close to 198, so it's still going to take some time. Okay, I see it's coming up to 62% and 97%, and this is done 100% complete. So we can just go on to the table statistics, and I see close to 198. The rows that I have on my source has been replicated and migrated to the target. So I can just go back to my target instance and just see the rows that I have in this database. So select count star from temp on the target, and I see it actually matches to my source. That means you can also validate from here that the migration has been completed. So this was a quick demo just to show you how you can migrate from your self-managed databases running on EC2 to Amazon Aurora. So that's a small walkthrough, and that's all for today. I'll take a pause and we'll check with Rob if we have any questions from the audience.
Thanks, Tanya. We don't have any questions from the audience right now, so thank you. But everyone, today we looked at the broadest selection of purpose-built databases for all your application needs and how you can leverage AWS database migration services to migrate data to and from the most widely used commercial and open source databases overall. Thank you to our moderators for posting the registration page for upcoming episodes, awssupportsyou.splashthat.com. Please bookmark this page, and we hope you'll join us next time for our next show. If there are any questions that were not answered today, you can post your questions on forums.aws.amazon.com. Please also feel free to email us any feedback to awssupportsyou@amazon.com. We want to hear from you. We want you to let us know what you'd like to see on the show. Thanks, Jade, and thanks, Tanya, today, and thanks, everyone, for joining us at AWS Supports You. Happy cloud computing.
Happy cloud computing, everyone. Thank you.